World War II was humanity's most devastating conflict, claiming over 70 million lives and reshaping the global order. But behind the massive armies and technological innovations stood extraordinary leaders whose strategies and decisions determined the fate of nations. Today we explore the greatest military and political minds of World War II, their brilliance, their failures, and the tactics that changed history forever. When Britain stood alone against Nazi Germany in 1940, Winston Churchill became Prime Minister at the nation's darkest hour. His greatest weapon wasn't military, it was his voice. Churchill's speeches transformed British morale, turning potential surrender into determined resistance. "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall never surrender," he declared, and Britain believed him. Churchill's strategic genius lay in his understanding that Britain must survive until Allies arrived. He prioritized the Royal Air Force, knowing air superiority was essential. During the Battle of Britain in summer 1940, his decision to focus on fighter production rather than bombers proved decisive. The RAF's victory prevented German invasion and kept hope alive. But Churchill was also a masterful coalition builder. He cultivated the Anglo-American alliance, convinced Roosevelt to prioritize Europe over the Pacific, and managed the difficult relationship with Stalin. His strategic vision, defeating Germany first, controlling the Mediterranean, and preventing Soviet domination of Europe, shaped the entire Allied war effort. Franklin Delano Roosevelt guided America from isolationism to global superpower. After Pearl Harbor, he made the crucial decision that Germany, not Japan, was the primary threat. This Europe-first strategy contradicted public anger toward Japan, but proved strategically correct. Nazi Germany posed the greater long-term danger. Roosevelt's greatest contribution was transforming America into the arsenal of democracy. Under his leadership, U.S. industrial production exceeded the combined output of all Axis powers. By 1944, America produced 1 ship per day and 1 aircraft every 5 minutes. This economic mobilization, more than any battlefield tactic, ensured Allied victory. Through the Lend-Lease program, Roosevelt supplied weapons and materials to Britain and the Soviet Union before America even entered the war. This kept both nations fighting and established America as the indispensable ally. Roosevelt understood that victory required global coordination. He created the United Nations framework even before the war ended, planning for lasting peace. General Dwight D. Eisenhower didn't command armies, he commanded egos. As Supreme Allied Commander, his greatest challenge wasn't defeating Germans, but coordinating British, American, Canadian, and Free French forces led by prideful, competitive generals. Eisenhower's diplomatic skills and organizational genius made coalition warfare possible. Operation Overlord, the D-Day invasion of June 6, 1944, was history's most complex military operation. Eisenhower coordinated 156,000 troops, 5,000 ships, and 11,000 aircraft across 50 miles of French coastline. His decision to launch, despite bad weather, required immense courage. "The eyes of the world are upon you," he told his troops, and they delivered the beginning of Nazi Germany's end. Eisenhower's strategy emphasized the broad front approach, advancing on Germany from all directions simultaneously rather than concentrated thrusts. While controversial, this method prevented German forces from concentrating defences and ensured steady methodical victory. By May 1945, his forces had crushed Nazi resistance completely. Joseph Stalin was perhaps history's most brutal leader, yet his decisions were crucial to Allied victory. When Germany invaded the Soviet Union, In June 1941, Stalin initially panicked, but he recovered to lead the most effective defensive war ever fought. His strategy was simple and terrible: trade space for time, sacrifice millions, and never surrender. The Battle of Stalingrad exemplified Stalin's approach. Rather than abandon the symbolic city bearing his name, he ordered not one step back. The resulting battle became history's bloodiest urban combat, over 2 million casualties. But Soviet victory in February 1943 marked the war's turning point. Germany would never recover. Stalin transformed the Soviet economy into a war machine that outproduced Germany despite losing vast industrial regions. Factories were literally moved beyond the Ural Mountains, reassembled, and continued production. The T-34 tank, designed under Stalin's oversight, became the war's most effective armoured vehicle: simple, mass-produced, and deadly. Stalin's final strategic achievement was the massive offensive that captured Berlin. Operation Bagration in summer 1944 destroyed German Army Group Center, Germany's largest defeat, worse than Stalingrad. By war's end, Soviet forces occupied Eastern Europe, positioning Stalin to dominate half the continent for 40 years. His strategic vision extended beyond military victory to post-war political control. Adolf Hitler was both architect and destroyer of Nazi Germany. His early strategies showed brilliance: the rapid rearmament, the use of blitzkrieg tactics, the exploitation of Allied weakness. From 1939 to 1941, Hitler's Germany conquered most of Europe with stunning speed. But his genius was tactical, never strategic. He couldn't see beyond the next battlefield victory. Hitler's catastrophic error was invading the Soviet Union in June 1941 while still fighting Britain. Operation Barbarossa was militarily brilliant but strategically insane. Germany lacked the resources for a two-front war. Hitler believed Soviet resistance would collapse in weeks. Instead, he had awakened a giant that would eventually crush him. Hitler's interference in military operations proved disastrous. He forbade strategic retreats, demanding troops fight to the death in hopeless positions. At Stalingrad, he refused evacuation, dooming the Sixth Army. He diverted resources to Holocaust operations rather than war production. By 1944, his paranoid micromanagement paralyzed German military effectiveness. Hitler's leadership became Nazi Germany's greatest liability. Erwin Rommel earned legendary status through tactical brilliance in North Africa. Commanding the Afrika Korps from 1941 to 1943, he repeatedly defeated larger British forces through innovative mobile warfare. Rommel understood combined arms tactics, coordinating tanks, infantry, and artillery in fluid, aggressive operations that confused and overwhelmed enemies. Rommel's greatest strength was improvisation. Outnumbered and undersupplied, he created Devil's Gardens, defensive minefields mixed with captured weapons. He used fake tanks built from cars to deceive British reconnaissance. At the Battle of Gazala in 1942, his risky flanking manoeuvre destroyed British armour and captured Tobruk, earning him his Field Marshal's baton. But Rommel's tactical genius couldn't overcome strategic reality. British General Montgomery defeated him at El Alamein in October 1942 through superior resources and careful planning. Rommel's supply lines were too long, his forces too small. By 1943, trapped between British and American armies, the Afrika Korps surrendered. Rommel had lost North Africa, but his reputation survived. Even enemies respected the Desert Fox. General Hideki Tojo became Japan's Prime Minister in October 1941, leading the nation into its most disastrous war. Tojo believed Japanese expansion across Asia was inevitable. Japan needed resources that Western powers controlled. His strategy combined rapid military conquest with political control, creating the Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere through force. Under Tojo's leadership, Japan launched coordinated attacks across the Pacific in December 1941, Pearl Harbor, Philippines, Malaya, Hong Kong, and more. For 6 months, Japan won stunning victories, conquering territories holding 450 million people. Tojo's strategy appeared successful. Western colonial power in Asia seemed finished. But Tojo's strategy contained fatal flaws. Japan lacked America's industrial capacity. Attacking the US was strategic suicide. The Battle of Midway in June 1942 shattered Japanese naval dominance permanently. Tojo couldn't adapt when initial victories turned to defeats. By July 1944, with American forces closing in, he resigned in disgrace. Japan would fight on, but Tojo's strategy had led to inevitable catastrophe. Behind Hitler stood professional military minds whose operational brilliance made early German victories possible. Generals like Erich von Manstein, Heinz Guderian, and Gerd von Rundstedt created blitzkrieg tactics that revolutionized warfare. Fast-moving armored formations supported by aircraft, bypassing enemy strongpoints to collapse defenses from within. Manstein designed the plan that conquered France in 6 weeks, an audacious thrust through the supposedly impassable Ardennes forest. Guderian pioneered panzer tactics, understanding that tanks should concentrate and penetrate, not spread out in support. These innovations gave Germany military superiority, despite not having the largest army or most equipment. As the war turned against Germany, these generals fought brilliant, defensive campaigns. Manstein's backhand blow at Kharkov in 1943 demonstrated that German operational skill remained formidable. But Hitler increasingly ignored professional military advice, forbidding retreats that would have saved armies. Germany's generals could win battles but couldn't overcome their Führer's catastrophic strategic decisions. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto planned the attack on Pearl Harbor, yet he opposed war with America. Having studied at Harvard and served in Washington, Yamamoto understood American industrial power. "I can run wild for 6 months," he warned. "After that, I have no confidence." His pessimism proved prophetic. Yamamoto designed Pearl Harbor as a decisive battle. Destroy America's Pacific Fleet in one blow, forcing a negotiated peace. The attack achieved tactical surprise, but strategic failure. American aircraft carriers were at sea, surviving to become the war's decisive weapons. Rather than terrifying America into peace, Pearl Harbor unified the nation for total war. Yamamoto's next gamble, the Battle of Midway, aimed to lure American carriers into destruction. Instead, American forces sank 4 Japanese carriers while losing one. Yamamoto's strategic insight that Japan couldn't win a long war came true. In April 1943, American codebreakers located his aircraft and P-38 fighters shot him down. Japan's greatest naval mind died knowing his fears were becoming reality. British Field Marshal Bernard Monty Montgomery never lost a major battle through careful preparation and overwhelming force. After taking command in North Africa in August 1942, he transformed British military effectiveness through meticulous planning and soldier morale. Montgomery understood that British armies needed confidence after years of defeat. At El Alamein in October 1942, Montgomery demonstrated his method: stockpile supplies, train extensively, achieve numerical superiority, then attack with crushing power. He refused to advance until absolutely ready, driving Churchill to frustration. But when he attacked, victory was assured. El Alamein marked Britain's first major land victory, and Montgomery became a national hero. Montgomery's weakness was overconfidence. His plan for Operation Market Garden in September 1944, capturing Dutch bridges with paratroopers, was too ambitious and poorly coordinated. The operation failed, proving that even methodical generals make mistakes. Still, Montgomery's careful approach at the Rhine crossing in 1945 showed his return to winning ways. He commanded German forces' final surrender in May 1945, a fitting end for Britain's most successful field commander. General George S. Patton was America's most aggressive commander, a warrior who believed in rapid movement, violent assault, and personal courage. A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan next week, he declared. Patton's Third Army specialized in breakthrough and exploitation, moving faster than any comparable force. In the summer of 1944, Patton's breakout from Normandy into Brittany and across France demonstrated mobile warfare at its finest. His forces covered 600 miles in 2 weeks, liberating territory and destroying German formations. Patton understood that speed and surprise compensated for casualties. Keeping enemies off balance prevented them from organizing effective defense. Patton's finest moment came during the Battle of the Bulge. When Germans launched a surprise offensive in December 1944, Eisenhower ordered Patton to redirect his entire army 90 degrees north, a supposedly impossible maneuver. Patton accomplished it in 48 hours, attacking German flanks and relieving surrounded American forces at Bastogne. His Third Army saved the Allied position through speed and aggression that seemed impossible. Marshal Georgy Zhukov was Stalin's greatest commander, the man who saved Moscow, relieved Leningrad, won Stalingrad, and captured Berlin. Zhukov's approach combined massive force with operational sophistication. He understood Soviet advantages, vast manpower reserves, increasing industrial production, and space to trade for time, and exploited them ruthlessly. Zhukov's defensive brilliance saved Moscow in winter 1941. Taking command with German forces only miles from the Kremlin, he organized the city's defense and then launched a devastating counteroffensive that drove Germans back hundreds of miles. This was Germany's first major defeat, proof that the Wehrmacht wasn't invincible. At Stalingrad, Zhukov planned Operation Uranus, the encirclement that trapped 300,000 German troops. His coordination of multiple army groups demonstrated mastery of large-scale operations. By 1945, Zhukov led the final assault on Berlin, commanding 2.5 million troops in the war's climactic battle. His methods were costly. Soviet casualties were enormous, but effective. Zhukov's campaigns destroyed Nazi Germany. General Douglas MacArthur combined strategic vision with personal drama. Forced to flee the Philippines in 1942, he promised, "I shall return," and did so in October 1944. MacArthur's strategy in the Pacific, island hopping, bypassed Japanese strongholds, isolating garrisons and advancing toward Japan without fighting for every island. MacArthur's genius was choosing where not to fight. Rather than assault heavily defended islands, he seized weakly defended positions with good harbours and airfields. Japanese garrisons on bypassed islands became irrelevant, stranded without supplies or reinforcement. This strategy saved American lives while maintaining offensive momentum. The reconquest of the Philippines culminated in the Battle of Leyte Gulf, October 1944, history's largest naval battle. MacArthur's ground campaign coordinated with naval forces to destroy Japanese naval power permanently. By 1945, MacArthur commanded Allied forces designated to invade Japan itself. The atomic bombs made invasion unnecessary, but MacArthur's strategy had brought America to Japan's doorstep. Admiral Chester Nimitz commanded the Pacific Fleet from Pearl Harbor's ashes to Tokyo Bay's surrender ceremony. His Central Pacific campaign complemented MacArthur's Southwest Pacific advance, creating a two-pronged offensive that Japan couldn't defend against. Nimitz understood carrier warfare, the revolution in naval combat that made battleships obsolete. Nimitz's strategic patience showed at Midway. Despite pressure for immediate retaliation after Pearl Harbor, he waited until intelligence revealed Japanese plans. His ambush at Midway sank 4 Japanese carriers, permanently shifting naval superiority to America. Nimitz then prosecuted a methodical advance across the Central Pacific, the Gilbert Islands, Marshalls, Marianas, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, each bringing bombers closer to Japan. What separated successful leaders from failures in World War II? Several patterns emerge. The greatest leaders understood that strategy, the big picture, mattered more than tactical brilliance. Hitler and Tojo won spectacular battles, but pursued unwinnable strategies. Churchill and Roosevelt saw beyond immediate combat to long-term political and economic reality. Successful leaders also built coalitions. Eisenhower and Stalin, despite vastly different personalities, both mastered coordinating diverse forces toward common goals. They subordinated ego to mission. Meanwhile, Hitler's inability to delegate and Tojo's rigid military hierarchy prevented adaptive leadership. Dictators can mobilize nations, but struggle with flexible strategy. Every leader in this documentary made decisions that killed millions. Even the best, Churchill, Roosevelt, Eisenhower, ordered operations that sent thousands to certain death. Zhukov's victories cost the Soviet Union 27 million lives. Patton's aggressive tactics caused high casualties in his own ranks. Leadership at this level required accepting that victory demanded terrible sacrifice. The worst leaders, Hitler especially, didn't merely accept casualties but caused unnecessary suffering through strategic incompetence and ideological madness. Hitler's refusal to retreat trapped armies that could have fought another day. His Holocaust diverted resources from war production. Leadership requires not just courage to sacrifice, but wisdom to know when sacrifice serves purpose versus merely satisfying ego or ideology. World War II's leadership lessons remain relevant. Economic power determines long-term military capability. Roosevelt understood this before entering the war. Coalition building multiplies effectiveness. Eisenhower's diplomatic success mattered as much as his military skill. Tactical brilliance cannot compensate for strategic error. Rommel and Yamamoto proved this through failure despite their genius. The war also revealed leadership's moral dimension. The Axis powers' embrace of atrocity, genocide, and aggressive war doomed them to not only military defeat, but historical condemnation. Churchill and Roosevelt weren't perfect, they made compromises and mistakes, but they led democratic societies fighting for survival against totalitarian expansion. The Allied cause was just, and their leaders' strategies ultimately served human freedom. The leaders of World War II, both heroes and villains, shaped our modern world through their decisions under unimaginable pressure. They demonstrate that leadership at the highest level requires strategic vision, personal courage, coalition building, and the wisdom to know when to fight and when to negotiate. Their legacy lives on in the world they created through 6 years of total war.